It's time to visit the blue hole.
Please don't make me go to the blue hole. I'm Annie.
I'm Emmy.
And today we're talking about Dave the Diver as part 2 of our Fishing Duology.
Yay. I love calling it a duology.
It's the most official, correct word we could use, and it also is kind of funny because I feel like I only hear of duologies as pertains to like sci-fi or fantasy series that only have 2 books.
This is our sci-fi novel about Dave the Diver.
Our epic. It's basically the Fall of Hyperion, or whichever one that is. I promise I've read them.
I don't know what you're talking about, so...
It's alright, we'll cover it later.
Let's talk about news.
Let's talk about some news first before we get into Dave the Diver. So my first bit of news that I wanted to highlight is that on the 19th, the New York Times reported on Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, and specifically that it is low on funds. This is relevant to gaming because the public investment fund recently worked with a couple other large funds, including Jared Kushner's fund, to purchase a controlling stake in Electronic Arts earlier this fall. Apparently, that was a huge expense that the fund undertook, in part, according to this report, because Prince MBS is a, quote, avid gamer. But then when you ask any, like, PIF officials, apparently they hate it if you call it PIF, which only makes me want to call it PIF more.
Wait, sorry, what is PIF?
But anyway, PIF is the Public Investment Fund.
Gotcha.
The Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund.
Which
so
they
PIF,
don't like calling it being called PIF.
Which they don't like that, but the PIF or PIF, if you want to be annoying about it, they'll say, like, oh, it's because it's going to double in value over the time we're in on it, but it's mostly because Prince MBS is an avid gamer. This is also relevant to recent news because Prince MBS was hosted as a guest of honor at a Saudi Arabia relations dinner at the White House, courtesy of Donald Trump, and met with a lot of big, important, rich people from the United States. So part of that was like a show of power and unity between Saudi Arabia and the United States, but also one of the ways that they've been exercising that power is through this public investment fund, and it turns out that the fund is actually struggling at the moment. So I wanted to say, anyway, the poor fund, what will Electronic Arts do now? But I don't know. They're probably...
What does it mean, like, just contextually, for them to be low on funds? Like how, I guess I'm wondering, like, is this something where they came out and they're like, we're low on funds, or is it because it's like, I don't really know how it's set up structurally, if it's something where it's like people can just like go query this information, or and also it's relatively not, what does low on funds mean?
Yeah, it's not public information. It's something that the reporters had to go dig up because basically, essentially, it means that they don't have the money to continue investing in things. They have to wait for more money to come back in from their investments that they've already made. And it's also important and relevant because in the Oval Office that day when Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was talking to reporters, he claimed, quote, without providing details, that his nation would invest $1 trillion in America.
Interesting.
Except he doesn't have $1 trillion.
We have to wait. They have to wait for their investment on EA to return for them to have the $1 trillion to
return $1 trillion. So just know that if you're buying Sims 4 expansion packs from here on out,
you're investing in the U.S.'s economy is what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly... Sorry, my bad. That's exactly what's happening. So anyway, but yes, the quote is that Prince Mohammed and his deputies have spent a vast portion of the nation's bounty on projects that are in financial distress. So maybe that's EA, maybe that's not. And they are frantically trying to turn things around, according to 11 people briefed on its operations, including current employees, board members, investors, and their representatives. Love the word frantically in a report like this. That's great news for The Sims. So anyway, I don't know anything about investing, so I'm not an expert on the money side of things. I'm just an expert on playing video games and laughing a little bit when I see news like this.
What next?
And another piece of news that I found relevant and which I sent to Emmy earlier this week is that, as reported by Game Developer on the 19th as well, Unity and Epic Games have partnered to allow Unity devs to put their content into Fortnite. So I hadn't realized, because I don't play Fortnite, but I know it's largely very popular, that they're trying to make it more into like a user-generated content marketplace similar to Roblox. And Unity and Epic Games have also had a like rivalry up to this point, but it seems they're putting aside their differences for the sake of making money with the great unifier. So now people who develop games and assets in Unity will be able to port them into Fortnite.
If people aren't familiar with how Roblox works, which like I truly wasn't until I started doing research on like what are kids doing on the computer these days, I always thought Roblox was just like a weird game that like had a lot of weird stuff in it, but it's what it really is a platform that hosts individual user generated experiences. They call them experiences, so like individual games. Fortnite has multiple experiences in it as well, like battle royale mode, and then there's like zero build, and there's like a racing. There's several different experiences in it, but as far as I understand, they're all developed by Epic or very closely. It's not just like any random person can put something on it, but they're moving towards this model where, for the most part, any random person can host a game on or experience on Fortnite, which is prompting some concerns from people in the community and especially in like around child safety, because Fortnite is also a place where a lot of children are hanging out, how it will be moderated at scale, because this is like a known issue with Roblox. And so Fortnite moving into trying to occupy that space would probably make them a shitload of money, because it makes Roblox a shitload of money, but seems to come at the cost of some moderation and management of that content.
The moderation aspect, which you know more about than me as well, that was in the news this week because the CEO of Roblox was on a podcast with Casey Newton and Kevin Roose and got into a bit of hot water talking about protecting children on the platform. Emmy, you're already making a face.
It was so bad.
Oh God.
I was reading it and I was like, yeah, it's not great. It's kind of the standard fare, making excuses about this stuff. And then as I went on, I was like, this is really bad. I was like, did this man get zero media training? Like, has he not been asked these questions before? Because he got so defensive and like was like cutting off the interviewers at every turn. Unfortunately, it is a New York Times interview and like podcast. So maybe skirt around the paywall. Don't give them money for it, or read, a highlight from some other news source. But it is, yeah, I was like, yeah, whatever. This is like not a very good interview. And then I was like, holy shit, this is not good.
Great. So if you were ever concerned about the direction of Roblox as a company, you can listen or read this interview and be even more concerned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, the other big news in gaming that I'm only really tangentially paying attention to is that all the like end of year awards shows have released their nominees or started happening. So the Game Awards has released their nominations, and then the Golden Joysticks just happened, and I know Claire Obscure won a bunch of awards there, which is not a game you or I have played, actually. No. Even though it has seemed up my alley. So
I know, me too.
Maybe I have to go play it, but then trusted friends have also not liked it. So it's kind of like, do we really need to? Whatever. Blue Prince, friend of the pod, Blue Prince, did, we spent so much time with that game. I feel like it's part of the family, for better or worse. Blue Prince did win Best Indie Game at the Golden Joysticks, so shout out Blue Prince. And it was also nominated for Best Indie Game for the Game Awards. But also when you look at the Game Awards, they nominate the same 4 games for pretty much every category, it feels like. So seeing like a little one pop up here and there, like Blue Prince or Peak for Best Multiplayer, is like nice to see, but also a little bit like how are you only nominating the same 4 games when so many good things came out this year too? I don't know.
Yeah. I
Those
do,
are
as much
awards.
as I like don't really buy into like, or at least in their present iteration, the Game Awards specifically, I do really enjoy this time of year. I really love listening to people's like long podcasts talking about, I think especially when people come at it from like the perspective of we're not going to decide the best thing or like the like
Mm.
objectively like best thing in this category, but we're going to talk about our favorites and like have a conversation about why that we like one over the other. I do really enjoy that
I think
season.
it's a good thing always to look back and review. The thing with awards like these or the Oscars or whatever, which are much more entrenched, but same idea, right? Like the highest industry ideal of what the award that you want to win is. It's so hard to look at something and claim it the best that year, knowing what its legacy will be. Because
Mm.
oftentimes, maybe something that was the most hype or most played that year or most well reviewed, years down the line won't matter. So I like looking back on a year as it is, but then like trying to decide what's the best ever is an exercise in futility to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's more about like my view of what the perception of the awards are supposed to do versus other people's perception of what the awards are supposed to do.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I have one more piece of news for you that is not gaming news,
Oh yeah,
but
you
because we're
said you had a
talking about
surprise.
it's a surprise. It's not gaming news, but it is fish news.
Oh,
That's what I wanted to talk about because we are
okay.
talking about Dave the Diver. I did want to talk about some ocean related news to go with it.
Sure.
According to Science News, Science Daily, there's new research that's out as of November 20th that confirms that there's a hidden divide in West Coast killer whales. So
Ooh.
there's the population of transient killer whales that live between like California and British Columbia. They're actually in 2 separate groups, it turns out. They have like inner and outer coastal habitats. So you might want to look at those killer whales and say they're all part of the same group. Killer whales, they're all the same. But no, they actually have 2 different populations that live and work in 2 different ways. And so that's important for considering conservation strategies and how to take care of them better. But also, I think it's really cool to think about killer whales having these cultural divides. It's kind of like if you talk about the East Coast and you want to say that New Jersey people and New York people are all the same, you would immediately have New Jerseyans and New Yorkers alike yelling at you. Absolutely not. Like, how dare you? And I like to imagine the killer whales doing the same thing.
This is even
That's my
more
fish
relevant
news.
news to me than you may have realized because,
Okay.
well, because I live on the coast, the West Coast, but we went to the San Juan Islands recently for our anniversary and we went to the Orca Museum there. And and so that was good. We didn't have that much time to go. I enjoyed it. It's like a great little museum to go to that I would recommend in Friday Harbor. But also, we went to the Lime Kiln Lighthouse, which is very cute. And they had this board that is hooked up with a microphone underwater that's always running that you can connect to, like, so you can just like press the button on the board and it like plays what's going down like on in the water at any time, but also you can connect to it with your phone and like listen as you're walking around. And I don't know, but something about it was just like magical to me. And I was like, this is the type of thing I would want to do. Like, I mean, I'm not a marine biologist, but like in terms of like an interesting thing with technology that like I could have the skills to implement, I'm like, I want to do something that cool one day.
I do have a quote from the article from one of the co-authors that you might enjoy then. This is so great. Okay, he said, this is Dr. Andrew Trites or Trites. I will link the article. He said, the inner coast killer whales are like city dwellers. They're experts at navigating busy maze-like streets of nearshore inlets, bays, and sheltered waterways, whereas the outer coast killer whales are more like backcountry dwellers thriving in deep canyons and rugged underwater terrain along the edge of the continental shelf.
They're so cool. And the inner
They're
coast
so
ones
cool.
go, hey, I'm swimming here.
I'm walking here.
Oh, the reason I was going to say this specifically, besides the wonderful underwater microphone at Lime Kiln, was that one of the things I learned at the whale museum or the orca museum is that they like track all of the orcas that are like around that area, and I think they're in 3 different pods, and they have names for each one of them and like pictures of all of them, and I just really enjoyed learning about their families.
That's so cool. Whales rock. Okay, so now that we've talked about video games and we've talked about fish, we can talk about Dave the Diver, which is both of those things at once.
Are, not to be pedantic,
Mhm.
are can you say that killer whales are fish?
Scientifically, no, but if you're talking about like an ocean creature,
Yeah,
and you're
they're
just saying
creatures that
fish
live in the ocean.
generically,
They're
it's the thing that
fish.
lives in the water. Big fish.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we want to talk about State of Silksong and Nikki?
Oh, yes. You actually have news.
I have Infinity Nikki news.
But, right, before we get into Dave the Diver, we do have a State of Silksong and, more importantly this time, Infinity Nikki to address. Do you want to do Infinity Nikki first? You look so excited.
No, it's so stupid that I talk about it every episode. To all our listeners who come to listen to me talk about Infinity Nikki, the least indie game I could imagine.
Well, for Silksong, I don't have many updates. I'm just continuing Act 3, and
Yeah.
there's a side quest, without spoiling it too much, where you have to collect these hearts from different areas of the map, and I have one main heart down, and I'm working on the boss for a second one, and it really shouldn't be as hard as it is for me as it is. Like, I can see exactly how somebody else would easily defeat this thing, but that's not me or my skills. So I'm just very slowly over time getting slightly better each iteration, and I will beat that boss.
That's
And you're
what
still on
Silksong is
pause,
all
right?
about, is getting slightly better over time.
Exactly. You're still on pause with it, right?
I'm less on pause with it than I was. Like, I went back to it a little bit more, and I'm stuck on the final judge right now. And if I could spawn, I don't know if it just is like this, or if maybe there is a closer place I can spawn by the final judge. It's just a long time to go from the bench back to the final judge. So I think that if I like was closer, I'd feel a little bit more motivated to get through it. But it's just like every time I'm like, ugh, I have to go
The
all
last
this way.
judge's run back is like notoriously irritating, so I don't think you're you're far off where you're supposed to be.
It
But
just
I
really
was
sucks when I
eventually
do
just
it,
like,
especially with games like Silksong or like challenging platformers. You get into a mode where you're like, you have the rhythm, and then something happens in your body where you just like lose it for like 1 or 2 more times, and then it goes back, and then it's sort of like a wave. It's the worst with Final Judge because it'll be like, I was so close, I did this long run back, and then I fucking died immediately because like my brain just stopped working because it's been doing this too many times, and then now I have to do it again, and that's usually where I'm like, "Ugh, I'm done. Okay, I'm putting it down."
so it's not even the boss fight that's getting you, it's really the run back.
No, it's the run back because like I do like I like the boss fight. It's just the run back in
My sister went through
concert
the
with-
exact same thing with it.
Yeah.
I think she was texting me for like 3 days complaining
Yeah.
till it finally worked out. So
Yeah. I've just been having a lot of sleep issues lately, and a lot of it is just like my body generally is too tense, and I'm having a hard time like relaxing my like muscles. I cracked my mouth guard. Did I tell you
oh
that?
god.
I
no.
have a mouth guard to prevent me from clenching my teeth and like grinding
Yeah.
my teeth because I do it a lot while I'm sleeping. And I clenched so hard that I broke the mouth guard.
That's bad. I have a mouth guard for when I used to grind my teeth more often, but it's like a kind of silicone-y texture.
No,
Is
that's what
yours
mine
that
is.
too?
I
How the
cracked it.
hell do you crack that?
I don't know. What I will
All
tell
right.
you is that the teeth in the back of my mouth are pretty worn down, and I should get a new one. But my dentist is no longer covered by my insurance, so I need to find a new dentist. Something that takes
Great.
me years to do.
Great. Yeah.
Anyways,
Relatable.
so that's been an issue lately. So like the I'm not always willing to put my body in the level of tension that it gets in for Silksong unless
When
it's like
playing
on a
Silksong.
weekend maybe. So
Yeah, I like to relax on the weekends by putting my body into fight or flight mode while I
yeah.
play a video game. No, I
Yeah.
get it. Which does make more sense to me that you would be playing more like Infinity Nikki. Although Infinity Nikki has its own stresses. I don't
Yeah,
want to
but it's
pretend that's
not
also a
it's
stressful
not
game.
physically I'm not physically tensing up. I'm just mentally tensing up.
Well, then do you want to talk about that instead? Not the mental
Yeah.
tensing, just Infinity Nikki in general.
Yeah, my Infinity Nikki news is that version 2.0 comes out on November 25th, and I'm trying not to get my hopes up because the last time there was a big update, it was a nightmare and like caused all kinds of controversy and everyone was disappointed and it was so broken.
The girl caught.
Yes, the girl caught
Right.
came from that. That and other things that have been building up, but primarily was like driven by that really bad 1.5 update. It was so buggy I couldn't play it on my PS5 and then I didn't play for months. And now I'm back again. But I'm very excited for 2.0 because there's like a new region. And they've sort of added new regions, but they've been, very smaller. But that's when like it hooks me back in is when they add like a slightly bigger region in an event update. I'm like get the
Mm.
joy back of like the exploration and like finding stuff. So I'm looking forward to this what I think is supposed to be a substantial new region with new styles of clothes and hopefully more like stuff to earn and do. One last piece of news that is not
Mm.
Infinity Nikki related that I wanted to touch on briefly because I feel really excited about it is the Steam Machine,
The cube.
the Cube. Steam announced that they are coming out with this little cube that is supposed to be able it's like the same thing it runs Steam OS. It's just like a fully operate as a desktop computer. But also as a console. And it's literally just this little black box, and it has different faceplates you can change out, which looks super cute. And for me, I'm very excited because I love my Steam Deck. And also, I've been in a situation where I would really like a gaming PC, but I don't necessarily have the space for it. And I'm hoping that hopefully, the Steam Machine, the little cube, is slightly less. Like, I don't think that it will be console price. I think it'll be more than that, but hopefully it's slightly less than like a gaming PC would run me. And then also it is like such a big space saver. And SteamOS is a Linux distribution, so I like to develop on Linux, so I can just use it straight up as my home computer and then just like carry my little box over to the TV.
Interesting. That's actually pretty cool. It doesn't work. It works as a computer as well.
Yeah, it should. And you can
That
install
is
other operating
pretty big.
systems on it if you want.
Cool. I was going to ask if we know that it'll run mods as well, because to me, the whole point of like a PC is that kind of flexibility.
I would assume that it would.
Yeah. So, anyway, it is pretty neat news.
So I'm excited about that.
How
We'll
will you
see
decorate?
how I feel about it when the price is announced.
Yeah, the price will make a difference. Assuming the price is something doable for you, how do you want to decorate your cube when you have one?
I don't know, but I'm excited to explore faceplates.
Imagine how many stickers you'll be able to
I
put on
know.
that thing.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, maybe I can just get a bunch of the same one. Maybe I can get a bulk pack of them. And now I have a place to put all my stickers.
I'm excited for the cube as well, mostly because I just enjoy that it's a cube, so we can keep referring to it as the cube.
It gives me cute aggression. Like, it's the same way I feel about like a Roomba with eyes on it or something.
You either want to hug it or stomp it into oblivion. There's no
Yeah,
in
just like
between.
look at this cute little guy.
I want to slice it like a cake and eat a slice.
A
That's how I
Roomba
feel
or the
about the
cube?
steam machine. Well, I guess the Roomba is more shaped like a cake, so you could also do it like that. But no, the cube. Yum.
Well, that's it for news. Very unorganized news, but
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So, getting into things. Dave the Diver is a pixel art style, 2D, 3D type thing fishing game that came out in June 2023 and achieved universal acclaim that year. In the game, you play the eponymous Dave the Diver, who is on vacation when he receives a call from an old friend named Cobra, who has discovered a magical ocean locale known as the Blue Hole, in which fish from all over the world live. He sees a business opportunity here. He wants Dave, the diver, to fish, and another old friend named Bancho to run a sushi restaurant in which to sell the exotic fish Dave catches. So the gameplay loop is as follows. By day and later at night, once you unlock the ability, you harpoon fish in the blue hole, and then by night you help run the sushi restaurant, setting the menu and running plates while Bancho comes up with recipes to tempt customers and win awards. You use profits from the restaurant to improve your gear and reach greater depths in the blue hole. Along the way, you discover sea people living beneath the ocean, and through them help stop earthquakes that have become more frequent and disruptive to business. You also face off with an organization called Sea Blue, which presents themselves as an environmental protection organization, but which is actually a paramilitary wing of a corporate fishing business that threatens ocean populations and habitats. You're laughing as if that is the exact description of what they are. Yeah. All right. Dave the Diver was the subject of controversy the year it came out because it was nominated for a number of indie game awards, and it was, in fact, by the clearest definition of the term, not indie. The developer Mint Rocket is a small team with a limited budget, but they're wholly owned by Nexon, a South Korean video game publisher also known for MapleStory. However, in other ways, it contains all the hallmarks of an indie. A lo-fi aesthetic, a decidedly non-AAA price, it was like $20, and a small, dedicated team. The director of the game, Jae-ho Wong, said themselves that they don't really consider Dave the Diver an indie game. I've decided to ignore all that, especially because I agree that it wasn't indie. Mm-hmm. Like, it was not independently produced by any means. But it is a smaller game. It is niche. And I think that is okay for our purposes. But we can talk about some of the other bits of the development process as well.
Yeah. I think the thing that a lot of people got upset about, or like on the surface, is that it seemed like people just saw the more pixel art aesthetic of it and said, this is an indie. I don't know that that's necessarily true, that that's actually how people were thinking about it. But I think that's what the surface level argument was, that people are just like, oh, it looks like an indie, so it is an indie. And I don't know whether that's actually a straw man argument in this or not. I don't think that we're necessarily adding anything new to that conversation now. But just as a disclaimer of like, we didn't necessarily go into this being like indie fishing games, Dave the Diver, and more of like, we each had played a fishing game that we really enjoyed. And these seemed like two good ones to pair with each other.
Mm-hmm. So other things to know about the development process, other than that, it was not really indie. The game was originally put into development in 2018 as a mobile game, but clearly this changed and it expanded through the years. It went into early access in 2022, which I hadn't known it was an early access type game. I really didn't hear about it until it reached full launch. It was iterated on until its full release in 2023. The developers were inspired by a real-life restaurant on Jeju Island off the coast of South Korea, whose owner dives during the day and sells what he catches at night, which I think is really cute. Mint Rocket, the developer, as of September 2024, had been spun out from Nexon into its own corporation with Jae-ho Wong as CEO. Also, by that time, Dave the Diver had sold 4 million copies. It was a big hit. So, Emmy, when you played Dave the Diver, what was your experience? How did you end up coming to the game?
It's been a while. I played it right when it came out. So I think I was just hearing a lot of chatter about it on various news outlets, gaming news outlets. And I do enjoy a fishing game, and I do really enjoy, as we've discussed many times, I love like a restaurant sim, and the restaurant sim part of Dave the Diver is very Diner Dash-y, which I really enjoy as well. So it just seemed like something that had a marriage of mechanics that I would really enjoy, and I did really enjoy it. I played a pretty significant chunk of it. I did not ultimately complete it because I think it started to wear out its welcome is more negative than what I mean, but I sort of fell off of it after probably putting like 60 hours into it, maybe 40.
It is like a 60-hour game.
Yeah, so I probably played about 60 hours because I think I was quite near the end. I just didn't wrap it up. The marriage of mechanics really worked for me. There's several like loops in there that I think play off each other really well. Of you don't just have the fishing, you have upgrading your supplies for fishing and your gear for fishing, and then you have the restaurant management at night, and then you can earn money through that. And then this game is a lot bigger than you think because it does keep adding mechanics, and we can talk about that. But so there's additional aspects like a fish farm and a food farm, and there's a lot of background story about the characters that you can become invested in, mini games in the restaurant, like critics coming. So I think all of those intersecting mechanics play off of each other really well to keep you going. But yeah, eventually I just was like, okay, this has like been a nice experience and quite satisfying, but I don't know that I am invested enough to see this story through, which I think also says a little bit about it.
Maybe a little. I'm excited then to talk to you about where the story goes, because there is a story, especially as you get into things with the eco-ish terrorists, and the sea people down below. First, we can talk about some of the things that I really loved, and first, we can talk about the mishmash of mechanics, because I really enjoyed that. I talked to another friend about this game, actually, because I was telling him that we were recording, and he said, oh yeah, so you went in thinking it was one game, and then it turns out it was 5 different games in a trench coat. And totally correct, because you're told it's the gameplay loop, right, of like fishing and then diner dash-ish restaurant management. But then, yes, there's also a farming aspect, because you not only get a fish farm, you get a farm to farm rice and other ingredients to add to your sushi. So that was something that you have to check in on every day. And also you get chickens. That's a whole thing. There are different mini games that pop up where suddenly you're in a visual novel, like Ace Attorney style, for the background of one of the characters. And then there were also times where I don't know how to describe it other than I felt like I was playing Trauma Center, because there was like a timed. Sometimes there were almost quick time events that came up where you had a laser that you needed to cut through the metal of a boat under the water with, and you had to do it in a specific amount of time on a specific line. And I liked that there was such a mishmash of mechanics. It kept things fresh and surprising. Yeah, you made a very happy face at the visual novel bit.
I'd forgotten about that, and I do remember that being charming. The characters are like chock full of character. Like, they're sort of tropey, but in an unexpected way. The arms dealer is like a like neck beardy type.
He's like an
That's
otaku,
the
like
stereotype.
A very classic.
Yeah. Otaku who like has his figurine that he loves and has like a cutscene where he's pulling on his gear to like work at the computer. It's also like Metroidvania is not quite the right term for it because it doesn't have like the platforming aspect, but it is sort of like a Metroidvania in the sense that you have this map and you open up areas and you have to upgrade your gear and skills to get into those areas, and then also within those areas there are boss fights as well.
Right, there's boss runbacks.
Yep.
As we are very well acquainted with, since we're Silksonging at this time. We can talk a little bit about the characters as well, since they are such a delightful part of this game. You play as Dave the Diver, an unassuming sort of hero, which I really enjoy about him. He's just a guy. He just fishes, and he was on vacation when all this started. He didn't ask for this, but he steps up at every turn to what is asked of him, and I really love him for that. So there's Dave, there's Cobra, who, by the way, I think Cobra is extremely hot. He's like this, like, silver fox businessman. You look like you don't even remember him. He's the one who's on the boat selling you stuff.
I was gonna say, is he the one on the boat? And I thought that he was, and then I got confused because you said that you found him very hot, and I
do.
No.
Sorry. You don't agree at all. Okay, it's fine. We don't have to address that further. She's looking really perplexed. I feel like sometimes we can super agree on this kind of thing, but now, not today. Bancho
Yeah.
is also super hot. Does that help?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
I think Cobra is like a little bit too much of a he's like the protagonist of like a daddy kink romance.
Ew. Don't say that. That's not
Well, that's why I was making that face.
that's not how I perceived him. What is
Okay.
ew. Okay. Well, Cobra ruined for me, I guess.
Sorry.
But we can move on to Bancho. Bancho is the hyper competent creative sushi chef who runs by a strict code of what he believes is worth feeding to people, and his goal is just to show everybody that every sort of fish can be made tasty. You just have to present it properly. And he has a tragic past because his chef career was cut short by a vindictive critic from long ago who does pop back up, which is pretty exciting. This popped up first with him and then continued to delight me throughout the game, but part of the reason I fell in love with Bancho so much is that all of a sudden, when you upgraded a fish recipe or asked him to do something, suddenly this over-the-top cutscene would play, and you would get to see, like, sakura petals falling and light flashing on a knife, and then Bancho's face would appear, and he would make something beautiful. So that's Bancho. Do you remember the cutscenes, by the way?
Yeah.
They're honestly one of the most delightful parts.
Yeah, I think eventually I would skip them because you've sort of seen it. But there are a couple that cycle through, and it's usually when you're like upgrading his skill, I think, or he's coming up with a new recipe.
So that's Bancho, and it turns into a visual novel when you go into his backstory, when you're learning about what happened with the critic and why he's so determined to do what he's doing with this restaurant now. And then, as Emmy mentioned, there is also an arms dealer you become acquainted with through Cobra. Arms dealer buddy is the stereotypical otaku type guy who you do several side quests for involving missing packages that contain anime girl figurines. You get him back his figurine, he gives you a gun, totally normal interaction. There's
That's
also
happened to me in real life at least 5 times.
Of course. In any case, there's also a character that comes up and basically unlocks your fish bestiary for you, but it's in the form of as if you're collecting Pokemon cards, and the guy is clearly designed as like an older Ash Ketchum. He's dressed like Ash from Pokemon. And then there's a fish tabloid reporter who asks you to take photos or catch specimens of weird fish. And then there's also an archaeologist who's researching the sea people, who was one of my favorite guys as a recurring character. And then another like sea biologist student who sometimes pops in and out. I loved all of these characters. They were all so weird and had so many little unexpected quirks to them. So I was glad that they, despite being built on some kind of stereotype for a lot of them, they ended up breaking out of them in one way or another. The only complaint I had about characters was that there were actually very few women who got spotlights. There are 2 female characters who recur. I guess 3 if you count the critic, but she only shows up much later on. One of them is a manager who helps you set up hiring for the restaurant, and then the other is the sea biologist student, and she really falls off. I thought there was going to be some romance thing set up between her and Dave at the beginning, but she just kind of disappears after her 2 initial side quests. And so does the manager. They don't really get development, but all of the men super recurred. They got big cutscenes. They had arcs. And I was sitting there like, okay, but what about the PhD student? What about her?
Yeah. I feel like if she and Dave had a romance, that would be a little problematic, maybe.
Problematic?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I think of Dave as like 50.
We don't know if she's not 50.
That's true. I can't picture
They're-
her.
She did
PhD
seem like
students can be
30s
all
tops.
ages, so that's true.
It's true. I don't know what age I thought Dave was. I don't think I thought of him
Maybe
as
not
50 necessarily.
Like a solid 43.
He's not even gray. His hair.
True.
But we don't know if he dyes it. But also, the ocean, I feel like, would be rough on dyed hair that way. The in and out of it all.
It comes out looking like Rudy Giuliani.
Oh god.
Just like dripping down the side of his head. I didn't notice that, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think it is true. I think it'd be cool if like Cobra was a woman instead. Like a really
Right.
sketchy
Oh,
like
then would you have a
woman.
crush on her?
I would.
All right. You know what? Fair. Understandable. Um, there's actually I missed one. There's also a sea people princess who you rescue, so that's a little tropey. And then I was hoping that she would become more important as the story went on because you do a lot more with the sea people once you meet her. But instead, she just hangs out in the palace, and then one of the sea people that you interact with the most afterward is her previously hapless bodyguard. So, who is a guy. So I was like, the women appear and then disappear just as quickly, but the men stick around. Was how I felt about the story of this game.
Yeah. Well, okay, you're forgetting several other woman characters, which is each of the anime figurines.
How could I forget? And then there's even a mini game. So one of the main interface for the game, or rather the menu interface, is Dave's phone, which I really appreciated. That was such a cute touch. And the one thing about that phone that I'm mad I never figured out how to, upgrade was you can have a phone charm hanging off the phone, and the only one I ever got was the Dave the Diver one, which is super cute. I want one in real life. It's a little mini Dave figurine hanging off your phone. How do you get more phone charms in that game?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I think I remember getting a phone charm. I feel like it's probably one of the many optional mini games. Like there's a game on your phone that's like a Sailor Moon game, I think, essentially. It's like a little
Oh, you're
platformer.
talking about. Well, I was going to say the reason I brought up the phone in the first place is because it does have mini games on it, and one of them is based on the magical girls slash like singer magical girls that the otaku arms dealer is obsessed with. What is his name? Is his name Duff? So those are some of the characters. I loved the aesthetic. I loved the cutscenes that would play, especially because as there are some side quests that you can achieve throughout the restaurant, like certain customers who come in wanting to be impressed, or game show contestants that you're trying to beat. Basically, every cutscene in those contexts became like a beautiful climax of Ratatouille moment. You know what I'm talking about? When the restaurant critic eats the Ratatouille and it takes him right back to his childhood.
Yes.
So there was a most like gorgeous, satisfying rendition of how the beautiful food that Bancho made them feel, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it like heals several relationships and personal problems.
Yes,
which
it's
is what
amazing.
I'm always aiming to do with food, but it never seems to work for me.
What do you mean? Who are you feeding?
No, I'm trying to do it for myself.
Okay, got it. Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe you need somebody else to make the food for you that heals you.
Yeah.
And then you can do the same for them.
I mean, that's basically my relationship with Rob.
Aw, okay, good. See? Because, I mean, it's not like Bancho ever got to make the food for himself that healed him. Mm-hmm. He's making it for other people.
It's like being tickled. Like, you can't tickle yourself.
Exactly like that. I was thinking that, too. In fact, I was about to say it.
I really like in like Bancho feeding people, I like that you get these little stories between characters who are not even really side characters, they're just customers who like come in and have their lives impacted by Bancho's food. It reminds me of a game that did poorly critically, but that I really love, Little Dragon Cafe. And it has a lot of the same mechanics. It has that same like go out and gather stuff, cook things. In Little Dragon Cafe, it's a rhythm game to cook things, which is fun. But then you get basically the story is like someone comes to the cafe and like you need to feed them food and like interact with them to move the story forward. And they do like hang around, but I enjoy that. It's almost like getting short stories. Like if you're reading like a collection of short stories.
Yeah, I understand that. I liked how the characters intertwined with one another. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they just came by and you solved their problem and they went away. But other times they would join the restaurant, or it would turn out that something that they mentioned in their backstory that you healed them about, a new character would come along and join them, and it turns out that was their long lost son or whoever. And I really liked that carrying through too. What that mechanic reminded me of with the Ratatouille of it all and the stories, it reminded me of my own gourmet dining experiences, of which I've had like very few. I really enjoy food, but obviously a lot of those are super expensive. But I have been to a Michelin-starred restaurant in Los Angeles when I lived there called Anaka, and it's been featured on Chef's Table. Chef Nikki has her own episode, and it was something that me and my friend saved up to go to because another friend of mine had done the same and said it was worth it. It was life-changing. And it really was life-changing. The format of Anaka is like a modern California-inspired kaiseki, so it's Japanese like courses, but with a spin on local cuisine. And they have one dish that remains the same on the menu no matter what. Everything else changes seasonally. And that one dish is this abalone truffle spaghetti pasta. The first time I had it, took a bite and wanted to cry.
Yeah.
Like, somehow it felt like coming home. And I don't know if it's just because my Italian pasta upbringing or whatever. It was just so beautiful, and especially beautiful to be there experiencing it with a friend who had also built it up to themselves in that moment. So I went the one time early on when I lived in Los Angeles, and then when I moved, we booked the dinner again as like a last hurrah before I left. And my friend told them that it was like my going away dinner, so they brought out an extra dessert for us, which was so sweet. And playing this game made me think again about how much food can really bring people together, and especially how unexpected ingredients, like that idea of surprise, can be so meaningful in something so delicious and prepared with such care.
Mm-hmm.
I know that not all Michelin-starred restaurants are what they're hyped up to be or worth the price, but I know at least Anaka definitely is. So this is my pitch for Anaka, but also I'm getting teary thinking about this again.
I know,
such a beautiful
there is
experience.
sometimes, I mean, I think it's one of many like sensory experiences you can have that like really connect. It like does the mind-body connection sometimes, but you just like get overwhelmed with like the pleasure. Starting to sound a little like you get overwhelmed with like the enjoyment of the thing that you're seeing. It was like everything pinpoints down to that like single sensory experience. And I think it's also this idea of like mindfulness and peace, of like your brain isn't thinking about anything else at that time except for just the feeling of like eating this food. Yeah.
Those are all the really wonderful things about Dave the Diver. And of course, the fun gameplay loop. I loved catching all the fish, and I'm a big fish fiend in like Animal Crossing, for example. So I liked that most of the fish were real fish that you could read about and learn about when you caught them. So I really enjoyed also just the gotta catch 'em all aspect of the game.
Fish
And
games
I got
are
really into
really tailor-made for like collectathons, because just there's a very wide variety of fish out there. Fish.
And I appreciated too that they went for I'm about to contradict myself in just a couple minutes, but I appreciated that there was the non-realistic aspect to this of fish from all over the world are in this place, and that's why we can talk about catching the blue hole, which I wish it wasn't called that.
I love that it's called that. I think it's so funny.
They just say it so seriously.
It's time to visit the blue hole.
Please don't make me go to the blue hole. Anyway, it was a magic place where any fish from all over the world could be, so you would be catching tropical stuff and then other things that would have nothing to do with them. And there was an Arctic area, and then also a thermal vents area, so you got a wide variety of fish to catch. Now I'm going to contradict myself. Now I'm going to get into the thing that I'm going to be unfun about.
Okay.
Emmy has taken out her notebook.
I took out my notebook to write down that our episode title should be either Time to Visit the Blue Hole or Please Don't Make Me Go to the Blue Hole.
True. Okay. Yes. But how will that relate to Dredge?
That's fine.
It's fine. Okay. I'm about to get unfun. And the unfun
You really
contradictory thing...
you're gonna disappoint me because I think you're not gonna be as unfun as you're claiming that you're gonna be. But
Okay.
I'm ready.
Well,
I'm
let's
prepared.
see. Let's see. This game is obviously set in a sort of fantasy world, right? Like it's not a realistic location.
Yeah, the blue
It's
hole,
an over
as we
the top.
discussed.
The blue hole. It's an over the top like anime inspired thing in a lot of ways. But it does run into realism in a way that I think totally breaks its ethos and in fact breaks what it's trying to say, or at least it sort of says about environmentalism. First I want to get into that through the lens of Sea Blue, the organization that sometimes pops up to stop you from fishing, but mostly they only want to stop you from fishing because they're trying to use the blue hole themselves for like factory farming dolphins. That's one in particular thing that you find out they're doing. And it's bad that they're catching dolphins. You, Dave the Diver, never catch dolphins. You just factory farm sharks over and over again, which are also smart endangered creatures. But that's just me. So there's Sea Blue. And I first want to talk about them because I was really disappointed with how the story with Sea Blue ended. Did you get to a point in the game where you reached an end with Sea Blue, the organization?
I don't remember if I did or I don't. Regardless, I don't remember. So I either didn't see it or I don't remember how it ends.
So then to catch you up on it, what happens is occasionally this one rep of Sea Blue, who's like a former Navy SEAL and is very military-y, he'll show up and literally fight you. Like, he tries to kill Dave multiple times. Very extra legally for fishing. And then at the very end, when you're way deep in the thermal vents, trying to do some supernatural stuff to save the sea people and their environment from imploding, he goes down there with a heavy-duty submarine, and you destroy his submarine. And he presumably just dies, like is crushed by the pressure. And this is after, at one point, you infiltrate Sea Blue's own headquarters and find their factory farming illegal dolphin hunting operation. You go in there. Okay. So you saw that and you see it's like pretty gruesome. Like looking, even though if you think about it, it's the exact same process that you're doing at Bancho Sushi. They just don't put it in like a rusted out old tanker underground. In any case, you see that happening and then it's never addressed again. You don't like contact the authorities. There's no higher ups to appeal to be like, hey, can we put a stop to this? You never find out who's funding Sea Blue or purchasing their goods. It's just kind of a thing that is also happening, and once you've killed the one literally killed the one representative of it that was harassing you and your enterprise specifically, it's over. So that part was weird to me and was a little like, I seek more of a resolution than what we just got here. And in particular, it was kind of galling to me because it sets up Dave the Diver in juxtaposition with what Sea Blue is doing, and it basically says what Dave is doing is not so bad, especially in comparison to what Sea Blue is doing. And in a way, it's not, because Dave is just one guy who's fishing, not killing everything in sight to bring it back up. It's supposed to be what he's doing is more like quote-unquote sustainable in a way or another. But also, the things that Dave fishes and how he does it does essentially become a sort of like ocean depletion exercise over time. And it puts this weird dichotomy between like, don't eat dolphins because they're cute, but go ahead and catch as many sharks as you desire and eat them, despite the fact that they're also often critically endangered as well. I was not having fun with the hypocrisy there. It did feel hypocritical. Was this something that you picked up on at all? I think I'm being unfun. Because it was also really satisfying to fight the sharks, because they'd fight you. Gameplay-wise.
I think that it does a better job than a lot of games do at engaging with this. And I think that it probably suffers from the same issue as we talked about with Potion Permit, of having a narrative theme that is not reinforced by the gameplay. And so, but I do think at the same time, at no point in Dave the Diver did I ever like clear the ocean of fish. You know, there's always a lot of fish, but there might only be one tiger shark or whatever in that location every day. And I wanted to contrast it with Dredge, which like there is sort of a consequence for overfishing, or at least there's a reward for not overfishing. You get like a sustainable fishing achievement, or there's like a book about sustainable fishing where it's like more likely to regenerate like the number of fish in that area. And if you fish all of the fish in like a certain fishing spot, it's not available to you for at least a few days. So there is like, I think, a pretty good mechanism in Dredge that reinforces this idea of not overusing your resources. But I also think that Dredge is like, or excuse me, Dave the Diver is more successful in this than like Potion Permit, for example, because you do have like this like farming. Would you be interested in a sequel where Dave the Diver has become the villain because they've scaled their operation to be larger?
Well, that's the thing. They do scale the operation to be larger.
Right.
Did you get to the point of the game where you open another branch of Bancho Sushi?
No.
So at a certain point toward the end, in conclusion to Bancho's arc of this critic who ruined his life and career earlier, the critic comes back and you impress her again, and it turns out that she's also the daughter of a like restaurateur conglomerate person who decides that she's going to help Bancho Sushi expand. So you do open another location where you can make more money, like passive income, as the influencers would call it. So, I mean, yes, I want a court sim where Dave the Diver is on trial. And Dave is on the stand saying, I'm just a guy, I don't know, Cobra told me to do everything. And then we watch Cobra get off scot-clean because he's sketchy enough to pull some strings.
Yeah.
But I'm not done.
Wait, okay.
I'm not done with being
I have a few
unfun
things to say, though.
Okay, go for it. You say them first.
I do think there's an aspect of, like, scale that's interesting where it is still quite different, even though you're, like, in it more, like, you are sort of farming your fish at one point, but it is not the scale of, like, a global corporation and like a massively mechanical operation. It's more akin to like maybe one fishing boat kind of, or like mid-level maybe operation. I don't know enough about fishing to speak on its parallels to like real life fishing. And I do think there is an aspect of like sustainability and individual, like going out hunting the creatures you need for your own nutrition, but it kind of does break that by turning into something monetized. And I don't know, maybe you could make an argument that it was intentional to present this tension between capitalism and the desire to expand and make more and more money, and this corporation that has already been in that state. So I think like the horror of it is like about the scale to me rather than this other thing. But I do definitely also get what you're saying about like, well, it's kind of fucked up that they're hunting dolphins or whatever. And it's like, well, there's not really much of a difference between that and like if they were hunting sharks.
Especially because dolphins aren't like innocent creatures.
No.
They're rapists.
Yeah, we know that dolphins
I don't know
are
if you know
rapists.
this. But they are cuter than sharks a lot of the time, and there isn't like a Jaws equivalent in the media about them.
Yeah.
So this is the podcast where we're trying to shine the truth on what dolphins really are.
This is the podcast that's here to cancel dolphins.
Exactly. But no, I agree with you. I definitely think I'm overreacting because the scale in real life and even in the game is
I don't think you're
markedly different.
overreacting. Like, I think you're bringing up an interesting point to talk about. I don't think that you're like,
Oh, thank
you're
you.
not like going out there being like, Dave the Diver hates regulation, and should be canceled and everyone should boycott Bancho
Well,
sushi.
especially because like there are so many indigenous fishing practices that are close to what we see Dave the Diver do that are also more sustainable than like the factory farming that we see in the sushi industry today. The other thing I wanted to bring up though is that again, the blue hole is a magical place, so they don't really have to face this stuff until of course actually it's convenient for the plot that they do. And there's also the environmental aspect of the difficulties of fishing, which is something that they sort of come to when they get to the supernatural sea people thing of it all, because there's a magic tree below the ocean that the sea people use for energy and many other things, and the magic tree is in danger, and therefore it has caused issues throughout the ocean, including earthquakes, etc. It's kind of a metaphor to me for climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a problem that throughout the story you have to go fix. But they never talk about like real climate change when it comes to fishing, and things that I was talking about were or thinking about as I was playing were like ocean acidification and like overwarming and like coral reef bleaching, and I was wondering if anything like that would ever be mentioned or come up. It didn't, but I did notice in the environments that there were bleached reefs depicted
Mm-hmm.
in the like shallows. You could see bleached out coral, and it's just never talked about. And I was like, why did you put it in this magic place? And then we just weren't going to mention like the real difficulty of it all. I think the thing that I'm struggling with most is that it like tries to toe the line between this like realism and fantasy that it can't successfully do, because by even making it look realistic, we're going to be reminded of what the real issues are, or at least I
Mm-hmm.
will, because I read too much about this crap.
Yeah. I was gonna say that I am okay with it not talking about real climate change issues and leaving it as allegory or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know. However, I get your point of like, well, but then they try and bring in these real aspects. But I think that everything is so cartoonish and like overblown. Like, I'm okay with that.
My issue was, I guess, I was like, okay, we can leave it as allegory, fine, if that's where the story is going to take us. But in terms of solving climate change, you solve climate change in the game. Its version of climate change, which is that the tree is in trouble, you just fix it by beating up a large monster. A large monster that was minding its own business, quite frankly. And the earthquakes go away, every single problem is solved. And there's no more discussion about like how to be more sustainable, how to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. And I was like, I think the game is contradicting itself.
Hmm.
I couldn't stand it. The idea that they were trying to say one thing and then it wasn't really being said, especially in like ignoring Sea Blue and just murdering the dude at the end. Um, that actually brings me to something that I told you I was going to say, that I was formulating my theory of Dredge and Dave the Diver
Mm.
in terms of environmental games and what they can depict, and why I liked Dredge so much, both gameplay and story wise, and why, despite being obsessed with Dave the Diver, because I really was, I couldn't stop playing, despite being obsessed with Dave the Diver, I couldn't get into it in the same way because these stories were circling, these issues were circling in my
Mm-hmm.
brain. And this is also an uninformed thesis because I'm not an ecological expert. I didn't do as much reading as I wanted to before this. The thesis. Only ecological stories represented in the form of horror can get to the heart of what it is to live in the Anthropocene. All else feels fake and misleading, especially if set in a contemporary world. I think that I can only do ecological stories as horror right now.
Mm.
Because if you're going to put me in the real world, it all feels like you're in any way. Because it's obviously not the real world, but it looks like the real world in many ways. It feels like we're just continuing to ignore the issue in the way that we ignore it every day to live. One thing that I was thinking about when I was trying to put this together as I lay awake at night in bed, tortured by this idea, was an article in The Atlantic from a few years ago talking about the problem with nature documentaries. Is this something that rings a bell to you at all?
No.
I'll send it to you to look at later, you have to read it. But essentially, it's talking about how nature documentaries, the type narrated by David Attenborough, are framed in such a way that you never see that these scenes of pristine wilderness are actually like just a mile from a city. Mm-hmm. It gives this idea that there is still unchecked, wide, pristine wildernesses left where these animals live, and there really just isn't. And so I feel like Dave the Diver, in comparison to Dredge, which is a decidedly supernatural fantasy world, was doing kind of the same thing that nature documentaries do. It's like a very particular frame. It takes the aesthetic of nature and ecology for a certain type of show and then decides to ignore everything outside of that frame or pretend it's not even there. It made me mad. It made me so mad.
Yeah, I think there's like a clash between what types of realism you're willing to take into a game. And so I totally get you, like, I think it could be horror or it could be fantasy. And, like, Dave the Diver is kind of fantasy, but it's not so fantasy. But, like, there's some fantasy that, like, we have that people talk about a lot in our culture of, like, that individual action is sufficient to mitigate climate change. But I see that it's in tension with making a fun game, right? Because there's a satisfaction to, like, I've completed the game, I did what I needed to do, things are fixed now, and, like, things are wrapped up. So I think, like, this is coming from a desire to see more nuanced story writing and, like, non-traditional endings of games, but I could see how those would be very constrained because I don't know, if you told me that when I was in the middle of the game, like, hey, this isn't going to end in a satisfying way, like, things are going to be left open-ended, I'd be like, interesting. I don't know that I want to finish it anymore.
I think it was worth finishing. Though it also ends oddly, I felt. This is a criticism from which I wanted more from the game, not less, just like because I was having so much fun. I crave more Sea People lore because they seem to be an ancient civilization that has forgotten most of their capabilities, and all they needed was one great man, Dave the Diver, to come in and do all their chores for them, and it fixed it.
They needed one great delivery boy.
One great delivery boy, which was most of the things that he did. I wanted more lore. I wanted to know what was going on. Did you fight the boss from the Sea People that was an enormous zombie version of a sea person?
Yes.
That had to be their ancient king, right? But they don't address that at all. Ever again. And I wanted to know so bad. They were just like, oh, sucks that you had to fight a giant zombie one of us. No further mention of him, and I wanted more from that. This game was so fun. And now I feel like I'm sitting here grumbling, like, David Diver.
I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I think it's like a through line, too, of other things we've played, of, like, we exist in a time of many horrors.
So many.
Not the least of which is the continued degradation of our natural environment. And so it does feel... I would love to play a game that both addresses these concerns effectively and also is not, like, boring or unfun.
That's what I was going to say, because I know I'm sitting here like, why isn't it educating the children on ocean acidification? But also, I would be asleep if that was the point of the game.
I wonder... I'm TAing a course called Game Design for Social Good this quarter, and so I'm interested to do some of those readings because there probably is, like, a serious Games for Change set of games that is about environmentalism. And I know that there are some serious games that are very fun. They just don't breach containment from that area very often. into the more mainline or mainstream rather.
This is why I think maybe one of the best avenues we have right now is horror and science fiction and fantasy, because it gets at the emotional heart of what we're feeling without what we're feeling and what we're doing and living through without having to contend with the data and facts of it necessarily. Like, I really like Jeff Vandermeer's works that often are ecological horror. So I was thinking about that a lot too. And I was also, as I was playing Dave the Diver, thinking about the news from a year ago that 1 billion crabs disappeared from the Arctic Sea. And it turns out scientists determined that what happened was the warming ocean made a lot of crabs' metabolisms like work too fast, and they like starved and died. 1 billion crabs. And then I got my little crab pot in Dave the Diver, and then I fished up a lot of crabs from the Arctic. Yeah, I think in terms of scale, I'm very curious to see what comes out of your class, because I want to know how to do it. And I want to play those games.
Yeah. Maybe we can have a serious games episode.
Serious games. Capital S, capital G.
Mm-hmm.
But I do still want to have fun. Like, how do I have fun through the collapse of our entire environment? Emmy, answer that question.
I don't know. I got to TA this class. I got to do all the readings first.
Oh, true. Okay. Well, get back to me once you've done your readings.
Okay.
Should we talk about some upcoming games?
Yes, let's talk about upcoming games. I have 4 games to talk to you. 5 games. 5 games. 4.5 games to talk to you about today. First one comes out November 25th, is called Randomice. Like randomize, but mice. Because every episode we must share at least one game where you play as a little mouse.
I was going to say, I'm sensing a theme.
Yes. Randomize, as I said, out November 25th, and is a procedurally generated Metroidvania with an emphasis on exploration and no combat. So I guess I don't know if you can necessarily call it a Metroidvania, but that kind of style of exploration. You play as a little mouse attempting to escape a beautifully hand-drawn house. Along the way, you discover random items to complete the requests of your fellow mice. The next one I wanted to talk about is called Night of the Lions. It is inspired by Don Quixote, and it comes out November 27th. I was drawn to it because it has a really unique art style. It looks like it's a platformer, and you're platforming through like a teenage girl's diary. So you're like running across gridded graph paper, and like sometimes you like go out onto the desk. It's developed and published by Eugene Subco, who previously released Press Any Button. As of 2022, he was living in Ukraine, but I can't find more recent information about like where he is currently. So hopefully the game releasing is a sign that he's like doing well and is safe.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm really interested in Night of the Lions because it looks really cool. And it also, his previous game, Press Any Button, looks interesting.
I'm curious about the style of running across a teenage girl's diary, because having been a teenage girl and thinking about my own diaries from the time period, I can only think of that as like a terribly boring and unpleasant experience because all of my teenage diaries are just full of complaining and bad handwriting.
Yeah, I don't know
even
how
know
accurate
why I was complaining so much.
It will be to being a teenage girl, but I will say, like, the handwriting is kind of messy, and it reminded me of Bobo's Belief System and how it had that kind of storybook writing, like, that felt like it was in the world. Mm-hmm. This feels kind of similar.
Yeah, and it felt like it kind of, like, it had scribble movements to the words.
Yeah.
I don't know if this one has that.
Yes, it kind of has that vibe. The other one, which also has a really interesting art style, is Effulgence RPG, which comes out December 2nd. It comes into early access December 2nd. This game features like 3-dimensional ASCII art. So this seems to be a passion of the developer, Andre Fomin, who has 2 other games on Steam where he created the art using just text symbols. So it's very cool looking. I would suggest you look it up just to see
I do
it.
enjoy the ASCII art.
Yeah, it's very cool. One I just wanted to mention quickly because I was curious if you knew about it is Octopath Zero. Octopath Traveler Zero is coming out on the 4th, on December 4th.
No, that is not on my radar, but I haven't been paying attention to Octopath Traveler news in a minute. I never played 2. I played the first one and was very taken and charmed by its style and also the initial characters, and then was really disappointed that there was actually very little interaction between the characters' storylines or the characters themselves. And then I remember reading that Octopath Traveler 2 solved a lot of those initial issues that I had with Octopath Traveler 1, and then I didn't get to playing it. So if it's called Zero, what...
So that's what I was like, this is confusing. It says like the latest installment in Octopath Traveler, which makes it sound like it's a sequel, but I don't really understand where the 0 is coming from.
So yeah, I have no extra information to offer, but I will look into it, and perhaps I will talk about it in State of Silksong next.
The last one I want to talk about is called Death Howl, and is perhaps the one of all of these that I'm most excited for. Comes out December 9th, and it looks super rad. The art is absolutely stunning. It's this like gorgeous pixel art deck builder game, which is billing itself as a Souls-like deck builder, which is not a combo I have heard before, and it piques my interest.
Does that just mean it's mean to you?
Maybe. I think it's like there's a big focus on boss fights that you sort of have to learn a moveset for. They have a whole list of like why it's like a Souls-like. You play as Ro, a hunter journeying through the realm of spirits in hopes of resurrecting her son who has recently died. So I don't know. I like deck builders a lot. This looks really, really cool. It's just like stunning, and I think that the story will be really interesting and hopefully thoughtful.
That's really exciting. Also, I love a gorgeous pixel art moment.
Yes. Yeah, I think you should definitely look it up because I think you're going to think that it's really, really gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Should we say goodbye?
Yeah.
That's what I should have... instead of coming up with secret fish news, or rather secret ocean creature news, I should have come in with an idea for how we should actually end this podcast every time, like a sign out. Yeah. I'll work on that for next time.
Well, okay, here's what we can end with, is that my fiance just texted me and said, should I get an ethically sourced turtle skeleton for my niece for Christmas?
I think the answer is, as long as it's ethically sourced.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, and that's all from Every Nanny Talk Indie this week.
Bye.
Bye for now.